Good morning, YouTube. I'd like to say hello to everyone out there, and welcome to my 200th video. I am the man behind the scenes here at YouTube channel MBH45304, and I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. As of the time of this posting, we have just short of 11,000 views on my channel. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for every one of those views, be it on YouTube's channel, on another viewer, or on a mobile device. Thank you. I'd also like to thank all my subscribers. There's very few of you, but I'd like to thank each and every one of you. You've all made my channel what it is. I post random variety stuff sometimes, but being antique radio repair and restoration is a hobby that I'm getting into. I started last year that I really enjoy. It can be kind of tedious sometimes, but the labors are well worth it in the end when everything's said and done. To the people out there that I have subscribed to, thank you for being there. You have a very informative source of information when looking up stuff on the internet. If you're wanting to learn, YouTube is a very great resource to learn from. There's a lot of stuff there, a lot of knowledge there. So in short, I'd like to say thank you again. Enjoy this video, and let's get to it.
Anybody that owns a Keurig coffee maker might recognize maybe a few of these parts that's in front of you. My mother and father-in-law had a Keurig B44 coffee brewer that basically made about a month's worth of coffee, filled the reservoir one last time, and it was lights out. It never worked again. And don't know if it was a power supply issue, which was part of this and this, or something actually up in here and this control board went bad. Well, nevertheless, what Keurig did to replace that maker was you sent them the K-cup holder out of the coffee maker, out of this particular B44. You sent that back to Keurig. Keurig verified that you did have a Keurig coffee maker with that little K-cup holder, which anybody could send them one anyway, as far as I could tell, without any kind of validation that you literally own this machine. But in turn, Keurig sent them back another B44 maker, and it's worked fine ever since. And I have heard, reading through several forums and stuff, of people having trouble with these. A few had made one cup of coffee and quit, and some had made several months or years worth of coffee and quit. Ourselves, me and the wife, we own a Keurig. It's the special edition B60, and we've had it for probably, we either got it in 09 or 10, I can't remember. But it's starting to show signs of stupidity. Every so often you'll brew a cup of coffee on the largest setting and it'll brew about a 1/4 inch coffee and quit, or it won't suck the water down, and sometimes it just acts real erratic and stupid, and other times you won't have trouble with it for several weeks. So I don't know, they've got a flaw in them somewhere, but for the most part it works pretty good. But anyway, the reason I'm showing you this is all this extra wire that's in this tiny machine that might measure from the bench up about that tall, maybe a foot and a half. And of course, you know how wide they are. We use the toolbox as a reference here. Maybe about that wide, about that tall. But anyway, all this crap, along with about 5 foot of freaking tubing, is in there. So let's run through the parts and show you kind of what we got. We got our main AC line cord here, which pulls 110 volts out of the wall socket. It brings that over and pigtails a blue and a red wire and a ground. Now all the grounds are central, and they mount to the bottom plate of the machine with a rivet of all things. You can't take a screw out, it's got a rivet there. But in conjunction with this ground, there's also this one here, which goes over to your stainless steel heating chamber. And there's two more. One of them comes back and ties to this main power supply block, and the other one comes off and goes over here to another power supply block. That's the ground side of things. The hot AC line, the red and blue wires, come in to this little power supply board here, go through a couple of chokes and capacitors and whatnot, and a big cap right here, and come back out these two red and blue wires, and come over here to these two red and blue wires, right here and here. Now you still have 120 volts coming into this thing, but at that point it comes onto the circuit board. And from where the AC line cord through all this mess here joins the circuit board, it then sends it out to this transformer, which this transformer takes 120 volts input via the red wires and outputs through the blue wires 14.5 volts, and it brings that back to the circuit board right here. Now where that goes from there is to everything else in this machine except for one thing, and that is two things. The other set of red and blue wires, both here and here, go out, and this is a I think this is your heat sensor. It's mounted to the side of the stainless steel heater that heats your water, and it had a huge heat sink on there, probably about 2 inches wide by about 4 inches long that this was mounted to. From that comes back out to this wire and comes down to a thermal capacitor is what it says it is. It's something that breaks if it gets too hot and shuts the unit off, which in turn it feeds it all the way back to this black wire to the circuit board again. So that whole thing there makes up a circuit of some sort. We just clipped it to get it out of the way because wires were going everywhere. From the 14.5 volts input, you run your main drive motor. This is what sucks the water down out of the reservoir and brings it up into the pot. You have a couple, what they called an airlock motor, that induces air into the lines and different stages of pumping, different sizes of brews, which this one had an 8-ounce and a 10-ounce brew cycle on it. This is your limit switch for your door when you put your K-cup in and put the door down. I think that these three wires here, the red, black, and white, all went to the heating element in the chamber, which it's low voltage, anyway off the circuit board, but all the limit stuff's high voltage, 120 volts. And this is your main circuit board here for your brew sizes, for your power on and off, auto off, where it tells them it needs to be descaled, if it's heating, or if you have to add water, which this has a vacuum line off of one of these pumps that come up to this little IC right here, which tells when it needs descaled. I don't know how it measures that, but it does somehow. And then also the 3 feet that come off the bottom. I thought maybe those might be useful for something else, but there's a lot of components in that little bitty machine. Look it up online, Keurig B44. I found a few drawings, and they're very compact. It's a pain in the butt to take apart, but it's kind of neat how they make it all work. So just thought I'd share this with you. A package came yesterday, and I was so caught up in the nice weather outside that I just didn't take the time to stop and open it. But according to the return address, which is Memory for Less through Amazon.com, I have a sneaking suspicion I know what this might be. So let's open it up and take a look-see. It'd be kind of embarrassing if it's not what I think it is, so let's find out. I'll be the first to know. I don't know, I always choose YouTube to be the first people to know stuff. And it is exactly what I was hoping that it would be. What this is a new digital memory card, SD memory card, for my Kodak C330 digital camera I have. And here's a couple shots of the camera if you aren't familiar with it. This is what it looks like front and back. Now, I bought this little Kodak camera back in 2005 to replace a $40 Vivitar camera that doubled not only in taking 2 megapixel pictures. I think at that time was the resolution on that particular camera, but it also doubled as a webcam that you could plug in through an SD or having a brain fart here. Plug in through a USB cable on your computer to use as a web camera at the time. It was a nice camera. It did an excellent job shooting pictures. It didn't take video. I think the thing would hold around 100 pictures. And it finally crapped out on me. I was on a job site in Washington, D.C., and it got to where it would take a picture and save them, and the next one would take, part of the screen would be dark, and then it just got down to where it wouldn't take any pictures at all, wouldn't even power on. So I was kind of heartbroken. I liked that little camera. It was a very nice first digital camera and a very good experience with digital media. It was my first digital camera for $40. It did a wonderful job. So I hiked on down to Best Buy and bought this Kodak C330. I think I give around $150 for it at the time. I wanted a decent camera that could take pictures and video if I needed it, and at the same time I didn't want to break the bank in doing it. Now this camera I take all my YouTube videos with. It is a 4 megapixel camera, and the memory card that I run in it right now is 128 megabyte. That's very old school for today's standards. This camera has a 1 gig capability for memory card, but I have found a few other things in the specs that this camera they claim will do, it does not do. So I didn't want to push it and have a 1 megabyte or 1 gig card laying around that I wouldn't use for anything else. So I scrounged around and found a 512 that'll work with this camera. And the 128 megabyte card that's in there, I keep wanting to say gig because gig is the current thing. Meg is so old it's not not even used no more in memory cards or anything. It will hold approximately 6 minutes and 53 seconds of video at 4 megapixels, which you'll notice some of my videos around the 6 to 6.5 minute mark. There is a pause there through editing software because the digital media card has gotten full. And with 128 megabytes of memory, it'll take approximately 154 4 megapixel camera pictures. And you can adjust the resolution on this particular camera down to 1.1 megapixels. And I think at that point it'll take just about 600 or 700 pictures with 128 megabytes of memory. There's also a 16 megabyte built-in memory, which will take approximately 20 pictures at 4 megapixels, or about 45 seconds of 4 megapixel digital video. So let's power down the camera and put this new 512 card in here and see how much we can take digital media wise, be it video or be it pictures. The old 128 megabyte memory card is out, the new 512 is in, and we can take right around 621 pictures at 4 megapixels and 27 minutes of video now. So guess what, you can listen to me ramble some more without fewer pauses and breaks. According to the specifications that came with this card and my camera's specifications, at 512 megabytes now and 4 megapixels, this card will supposedly hold 256 pictures. Well, we can take almost, well, twice as many of that and a few more. So that's kind of interesting. And at the time of manufacture of this particular memory card, 64 megabytes was still available, and 1 gig was the highest you could get at the time. This was probably, these are still made new, but the copyright date on it is 2004 for Kodak. And just for the heck of it, I lowered the resolution down to 1.1 before I shot this video, and we can take an earth-shattering 1,821 pictures with this camera now. We'll never get bored, will we? Okay, anyway, some of you might be asking, well, why mess around and get an obsolete card for an obsolete camera? Well, folks, I like the way this camera does. I wish it would do better in lower light situations. As you're seeing now, things are dark, you don't have a lot of light in the room. It does have a light sensor on the front of the camera. It adjusts fairly well outside, but in low lit dark areas it doesn't handle the situation very well. But I like the camera. It takes excellent stills, and it's got a setting for up close pictures less than 28 inches. I shot a lot of my IF transformer pictures on that Sylvania radio that I'm working on with that. They did a wonderful job. And if I need to get in any closer than that, I have a flatbed scanner. I just lay my stuff on there and scan it in. It does a good job too. But what I learned with this camera when I bought it, that now I can shoot longer video, and pictures with the bigger memory card, that my memory card will now outlast the batteries. Well, that's another thing I learned when I first started working with digital cameras, that they eat batteries like something unreal. So for another $30 I walked on down to Best Buy again and bought a Kodak. This was a camera package that was optioned with this camera. I didn't buy it at the time, but I went back and got it later because I figured alkaline batteries didn't last near as long as what these rechargeable jobbies did. I think it was around $30. I got a nice case for the camera. I got a plug-in nickel rechargeable battery charger and 2 battery packs. Now these battery packs, they lasted good for about a year to 2 years. You can charge them and barely take 2 minutes worth of video and they're done. They're just wore out. I used and used and used them. And this does have a recycle mode on this charger. When you put the battery into the charger, you press and hold that battery and it'll drain it and start all over again. That's how I'm getting 3 minutes worth of use out of those batteries still. So I've kind of retired them, and they are an NiMH battery, and they're 2100 milliamp an hour at 1.2 volt time 2. So the camera runs approximately, 6 volts thereabouts, 3 volts thereabouts. Anyway, batteries were shot, so I was introduced to these Duracell batteries, and they're about $15 for 4 batteries. They're rechargeable. I have a charger out in the other room. They're a 2450 milliamp hour battery, and they do great in this camera. I can take almost 20 minutes worth of video and they're still alive and kicking, and they've recharged. I've had them now for probably 4 months, 5 months, maybe a little longer than that, and they've done an excellent job. I highly recommend them for digital cameras and CD players. As I said, the initial cost is kind of high, but you'll be well rewarded in the end because you actually have a quality product, and it's something you don't hear too much in this day and age anymore. So anyway, now that you got a bigger media card, you should be able to shoot a lot more video without a lot less pauses. Does it look any better? It's not high definition. Huh. That's crazy. I was hoping a high definition picture on a standard definition camera by just changing the memory card. Are you kidding me? That sounds like something you'd hear in today's standards. Why don't my cameras shoot high def when it's standard def? I got a big enough memory card. It doesn't make a difference. Just joking around. Killing some time. Okay. Shut her down. there you go, a 1919 Victor VVXIV Victrola. This ain't in the best of shape. I did some restoration videos on this a while back, mainly for the cabinet, because the veneer was peeling off. I glued it all back on and glued the legs back in place. We still have a little bit of veneer work to do. It ain't in as bad a shape as what it was for sitting in a damp factory for a number of years, drawing moisture. The lid's been put back on it. The hinge assembly's back in place. The mechanism is still packed full of old grease. I've gotten it to loosen up quite a bit from what it was clear back at the beginning when I first started posting videos to YouTube. I think it was the second video I did, or first one. Video I uploaded to YouTube was of this machine playing a 50 style Columbia record, which ironically is what come on it and had been played and played and played, so it was so screwed up. Didn't matter if I played it some more or not, even though it was a Frankie Laine record. I kind of liked the song. But this one here is a Columbia record from right around 1900, and the name of it was Serenade, and it's played by the Trio de Luce, and I'm assuming they're Italian or however that is. It's a flute, cello, and harp. And funny enough, these records were only, and it cost a lot of money at the time, 75 cents in the United States and 90 cents in Canada. These were the Columbia gramophone records. So this machine needs some work on the mechanism. It needs to be sent off and rebuilt. The springs are weak, so sometimes you have to keep cranking it as it's playing to keep the speed constant. The reproducer's needing rebuilt. It's getting a little bit of dryness in the diaphragm, but it still plays for its age. As far as I know, it's the original reproducer on this machine. Our speed control is non-functional, which there again, it's running at about 76 RPMs maximum speed. That's something else that'll be dealt with when the mechanisms are built, hopefully this summer. I'm not too sure if I'm going to send off and have this machine's mech rebuilt, or I'm going to try to just degrease it myself, and if it needs help then send it off, because the underside of this is a nightmare. If you've seen the restoration videos back a few months, you'll see what I mean. It's just a sticky nightmare. But all in all, the machine's in good shape. It's playing again. The inside's beautiful. This is supposed to have had a cherry finish on it and been mahogany on the outside and cherry on the inside, which where, you know, over time water and dampness didn't get to it, it's still in really nice shape. But where it took the dampness and stuff over the years, it took that mahogany finish from a nice high polished finish down to a hard flaky off type finish, and it's just very, very rough to the touch. The inside of the lid is just absolutely gorgeous. The light again is low, but that's a beautiful lid. So just thought I'd share this morning. I like that song, and it was a good way to start the morning. Before I got into antique radios as a hobby, I worked on small engines for a number of years, and didn't make too bad a go of it, repairing, rebuilding, and I didn't paint anything because that was just kind of a pain in the butt. So I basically repaired and cleaned up and got stuff running again. What we have in front of us here is a 1965 Cub Cadet 122, and this belonged to my grandpa. And if you'd seen the videos of the electronic books and stuff, this is the same grandpa that those come from. What this had in it was a Kohler K301 12 horsepower gasoline single cylinder engine. The original engine that was in there wore horribly. The cylinder was egg shaped. The piston was bad. It had slop in the connecting rod, something unreal. So I sent it out to a machine shop and had the cylinder rebored, and got everything back together. The guy rebored it 10 over, and we got all the parts back. It took probably 2 or 3 months to get the parts back. I really wasn't satisfied with his turnaround rate, but he was busy doing some other stuff, but he also screwed around a lot in his free time. And we got it back, put it together, and really didn't think nothing about it because he had done some work prior to me for a few other projects and never had a problem with him. Put it together, got it running, and was adjusting the governor, when all of a sudden this thing took off and went wide open, and the governor stuck, and it basically busted the cast iron skirt off the original engine and the engine block on the inside, tore the connecting rod in two, and busted the wrist pin out of the bottom of the piston. Needless to say, I was devastated. So in the teardown process, I started measuring some parts and taking some tolerances, and found out that he had bored this over. Instead of 10, he went like 9.7. It was too tight. And you wouldn't believe that that little bit of tolerance would make a difference, but by golly it did when heat and friction started to be added into the equation. So basically the original K301 was junk. I could buy a short block rebuild kit for it, and at the time through Small Engine Warehouse over in Dundee, Indiana, northwest of me, was right around $400, and I would have needed some of the parts that got damaged on that other engine to rebuild the short block, so that wasn't an option. What I did end up doing was going back and purchasing a brand new, from the manufacturer, Kohler K301 single cylinder gas powered engine, and that cost me right around $1,200. And the shipping weight on that engine, being this whole machine is cast iron, was just about 105 pounds just on the engine alone. Got that installed, have never had a problem with it since. So that was a that was a major undertaking on this thing, that engine, and to have everything just kind of go to crap from there. I like this tractor. I plow snow with this tractor in the winter. I have a 3-foot blade that fits on it, and I have a 46-inch deck, I think, that I have never mowed with. I've rebuilt, but I've never mowed with it. I use my Dixon for that. What this has for rear end is basically the equivalent to the Farmall A's. Super heavy duty gearing in the rear ends. I took the rear end apart on this one when I first got it, drained the fluid, checked all the gaskets and the teeth in the rear end on the ring gear and all that. For a tractor at that time that was almost 40 years old, there was hardly any wear anywhere inside of that. I think I've had this tractor now probably since 2004, and I want to get it repainted one of these days. I have all the new decals and stuff for it, but I've just never had the time to get it in and get it painted. Been finding some replacement parts here and there. I had to find a new cap. I had to put a new steering wheel on it, because when Grandpa and Great Grandpa got together, they tried to load this onto a pickup truck. One of the boards broke and the whole machine ended up on its top. And the steering wheel, I still have it, is just flat. It does not have any of the bowed properties of what the original one should. The seat is original. Couple cracks here and there, but nothing major. This does have a type of 3-point pickup right there. You have a rod that sticks in, and your lever up here lowers and raises that. On the rear end, we're sporting the original tires. They are Goodyear, and I'm looking for a size as I show you this. They're Goodyear 23 by 8.50 12s, and they are original. The two on the front I've replaced 1 year after the next, because this was used in the woods for a while. I picked up thorns in the tires, and the tires were just completely shot. They were original when I bought this off of Grandpa. I think the ones on the front here are Carlisle's. Yeah, they're Carlisle's. And let me look for a size on them. I'm trying to see here. These are a 16 6.58 is what these tires are. I couldn't get a match set, so I kind of had to go with what they had. Under the hood, everything except for that engine is original. Had to put a couple new headlights in. The headlight kit on this particular machine was added by Grandpa. I just had a flat plate you had to drill the holes out of. Install your light bulbs and a voltage regulator and a switch to turn the lights off and on right here. The new engine was then re-equipped with its original shroud, gas tank, float bowl, new carburetor of course, and then all the other drive chain components that goes in with it. So there's a look at a 1965 Cub Cadet 122. We recently had a new flea market come into town on the 1st of April, and I went there last weekend, and I had some time to kill yesterday. I stopped in there again, did some looking around, and I seen this little Emerson battery powered portable AM tube radio sitting there. The first time I was through there, I thought, you know, that's pretty expensive. The guy was asking $35 for it. Well, that's pretty expensive. It don't look like it'd be all that rare, you know. Blah blah blah, it's just another radio. So I got thinking about it. It's one of the things that people that collect radios like myself probably get stuck in their head from time to time. You see something, you think, man, you know, you wonder though after a while how many more of them might be out there. And maybe they're a little bit more rarer than what you think, but I don't think that's quite the case with this set. What this is an Emerson 560 battery powered radio, and it uses a 67.5 volt battery for your B plus and 4.5 volt battery for your filaments on your tubes. So I went online and got doing some digging, went through the normal routine of looking on Nostalgia Air, and sure enough they have a schematic for it. And what this set uses for tubes, let me find a layout here. It uses a 1R5, a 1T4, a 1S5, and either one of these two, it could be a 3S4 or a 3Q4, which this particular set here has an Emerson 3S4 installed in it. And one of the other tubes is Emerson, and one was a Raytheon, and I can't remember what the other one was. They aren't all original, so it's had some work done on it over the years. And this dates from right around 1948, late 47, they started building them. So I got my schematics off of Nostalgia Air and went over to Beatman's website that I have a connection to, and got a schematic off of them, just like the Sylvania. Time to start comparing notes and figure out what's right and what's wrong. But these two from Nostalgia Air, you don't see a schematic in there anywhere. What they have is scanned pictures, and they are really grainy on the website, and they printed back out decent for, you know, far out looking at it, but getting down to zooming in, you can't tell one thing from another. And it's the same case here on the bottom of the Beatman's one. This one's just totally awful. It's just like a big black smear. Nostalgia Air didn't have a schematic, but they have a parts list. The Beatman's website I have a connection to had a schematic and no parts list, so maybe this time I'll get lucky enough that these two will kind of correspond to each other and walk hand in hand, but who knows. Oh, I did try to talk the guy down on this set from $35. He wasn't budging. He wanted $35 for it, so I hauled around a little while, and well, alright. So this morning I was looking around, and there's a guy on eBay that has one of these exactly like this, plastic case, original leather handle. It's pretty much in the same shape as this one. It's got some scuffs. You can see it, the light shining on it. Pretty much the same thing the way this one. $200 is what the guy wanted. That's not including shipping. $200. There's another one on another website that was linked to Radio Museum that the guy wanted $70 for that radio. Just like this one again. Same red cabinet, plastic cabinet, same leatherette handle. Excuse me. These sold originally in 1947-48 for $19.95. So it's a far cry from its base price. There's also a white version of this that was made, which looks like faux leather on the front. It's embossed into the plastic. It was completely white and had a black leather handle. It rather sharp looking radio. It had a brass dial down here that the numbers were on, whereas this one has plastic. And back and behind here, I believe that's probably painted steel or brass back in there. It's hard to tell. It is original with one of its knobs. This one here looks like it probably come off of a Zenith set. We have the Z, so that's not original. Inside, this thing is just dirty as all get out. Everything you touch has this nice blackness to it. It's just disgusting. But you'll have that with old sets. Here's our connection for our 67.5 volt filament battery, or I'm sorry, B plus battery. Here's the filament connection for 4.5 volts. You have antenna leads, which you could pull them out to take the back off, and there was also an external wire that you could pull out and use for, you know, a little bit better reception if you needed it. The tags down in here, this shows what your battery, your manufacturer, either be Eveready, Rayovac, or Burgess, what this took. It told how to lay out the antenna. And there's another one up in there I can't get out. It's still glued in. I'm not going to tear it up. It'll just disintegrate trying to get it out of there. It shows tube replacement and placements. Pretty compact little radio. And this is battery only. There was another one that was listed online. It had AC power capabilities, and from what I understand, in 47 they did make this set to be powered on an AC line or batteries, and then in 48 they just went directly over to battery only. So there's a look at my 1948, from what we believe to be a 48, Emerson 560 battery powered AM tube radio. It's in a pretty decent shape, so one of these days I'll have this one down on the bench and get tearing into it. But we've got some other projects to get by first, so this one goes on the list. Oh, here it is about 25 till 8 on the 10th of April. 64 degrees outside. Gotta love that. I looked this morning at about 4 a.m. it was 62. And the meteorologist on TV said we actually did not fall down below 70 degrees until about 2:30 this morning. This is a welcome change. As you can see, the flowers are blooming and tulips are coming up back here. Birds are singing. Having a good old time. Couldn't ask for nicer weather. Today's supposed to be the last day before a cold front comes through, and I think they're calling for middle 60s tomorrow, and then low 50s on Friday with rain tomorrow and today. Thunderstorms tonight possibly. Hopefully nothing severe. It is the season. Let's take a walk down the sidewalk here and see what all we got blooming here. I'm not sure exactly of every species of flower my wife has out here, but there is some pretty nice ones growing. Rose is looking good back there. Looking out this way is not very active right now. Mums, I think we lost a couple mums this past fall and winter. Was a pretty little yellow flower up here the other day. I think the wind pretty much done him in. The irises are starting to peek out. Nothing too impressive around here. No, not really much to look at on this side. Oh, there we got some stuff growing. And the lint from the dryer vent. Irises again coming up. These are looking pretty good. I see a kitty cat in there staring at us. Watch, here she comes. She's nosy. What are you doing, Shadow? I apologize for camera noise. Wind blowing pretty good this morning out south. We got two plots for gardening out here. This is the one behind the garage. And basically we have a couple plants of rhubarb. We put some tomatoes in on this end. And my wife's got some pretty flowers at the other end. But the last 3 or 4 years we've been trying to keep alive 3 blueberry plants here, and I hate to say it, I think over the winter they all met their fate. They're all dead, I believe. We usually cage these up and put a bunch of straw around them to kind of protect them, and this one the rabbits got a hold of last year. He's right here, you can barely see him. And the other two, they're just as crisp as can be. I think they finally died. Oh well. This gives us more options to plant something else back here this year. At least I don't have to till around them anymore. That was a pain in the butt to get through these little passages to till around them. So maybe something better will come along. The apple trees are budding out nicely. This is the one that puts on the red apples. I'm not sure the exact type of apple this gets. Every year we get a decent crop of apples. Last year we didn't get too many. It was so doggone dry and hot. But when you do get a nice apple on this tree, it has always got a look like it's been stung by an insect, and it has a lot of rot. Pretty good sized apple tree. It ain't very old, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. And this one's a Granny Smith, and I think that one's a Red Delicious, and the Granny Smith, it's starting to put on some buds. This one's always a slow bloomer. He's a tiny little tree. The ice storm about 4 or 5 years ago basically laid this one over at an angle about like that, and since then I've had it tied back, and it's still a little soft around the base, but it survived. Ice was brutal down here one year, up here one year. It was just awful. We lost a lot of tree limbs. I lost the whole side out of this tree back here. It fell out into the yard. We lost the tops out of a couple of our nice pines. Which I want to show you something on these pines. Here in Ohio we have a real bad problem on our pine trees and a lot of the soft and coarse needle trees, and it's what's called a bagworm. And these things are deceiving, and this is what they'll do to your tree. See how the top of that one's dead? My little one back here by the barn 2 years ago, I almost lost him. The whole top was completely dead. But what these look like are these little things that look like a pine cone. These actually are from probably last year, maybe even the year before. The darker they are, they're dead. They're like last year's design. If they're green, that means they're alive and active, which right now they're dormant. They don't really start moving till maybe late April, beginning of May, and by the end of May it's too late to even spray for them. But these things will develop as a larvae, and they can spin silk like a spider and jump from tree to tree to tree, and if left unbothered, you know, they will kill your pine trees. You can see some dead right there too. We got a couple nice pine trees back here on the property, and these things, they'll basically just suck the sap and out of your tree and just destroy it. I've got these two trees back here. They're totally covered again this year, and then I've got a tree. That one's covered. This big one back here is just fine. And it's weird how they'll spread out. How one tree will be covered and completely, you know, dying in the top, and then the one next to it won't have any. And I don't know how I'm going to get to the top of some of these out here, because they're about 30 foot tall to spray. Even our soft pines back in here, I noticed last year, have got those doggone bagworms on there. And these things are destructive. They will hurt your trees. So keep a lookout for them. And I found out about them through our local conservation website, and our soil and water conservation, I should say, here in the county I live in Ohio. They have information on there about that, and they're just a bagworm is what they go by, and they'll hang on the pine trees, they'll hang on our maple trees. I've seen them on the pussy willow trees we have down by the pond. They're just everywhere, and if left untouched, they will destroy your pine trees. Let's not pass that along. Here's a good example of what them bagworms will do if they're left untouched. This tree used to be completely needled on the other side like it is over here, and these have been untouched for about the last year. Now they lay dormant over the winter, they don't move, and in the spring they come back to life. But here's my little tree I was telling you I almost lost. Basically from right here up, he was completely dead 2 years ago. I mean, dry, hard, the branches would just bust off. I kept a hose on him for about a day and a half, picked all the bagworm off, which what I did with them, you want to destroy them. You don't want to just pick them off and chuck them on the ground because they're still alive. I took a 5-gallon bucket full of kerosene, picked them off and threw them in the kerosene, and basically let them set overnight, and that seems to kill them. So you want to be proactive when you pick them to make sure that they are destroyed once they're taken off the tree. And down here in the front yard, off to the side, is my compost pile in my other garden, which we basically do strawberries out of. We have a row here, and a row here, and a row in the back. And they're slowly coming back to life. We cover these every year with straw. And they're looking pretty good. Like I said, last year being hot and dry as it was, these things took a beating. And then by the end of summer we got a nice rain for a day or two and it cooled off, and they put out a ton of strawberries, but unfortunately it was just too late for the plant. So hopefully this year we'll have a good crop of these. See what happens. And to finish up this video, I just wanted to give one last parting shot of the Sylvania radio down here on the bench. Haven't got back to putting the IF transformers in it yet. Still laying back there. All my correspondence is down here and new emails I've been passing back and forth between a couple fellows. And I just wanted to say one more time, thanks again for watching and making my channel what it is. I really do appreciate that. And as we move on, we'll have bigger and better things, hopefully, to post and to bring up and to show everybody, you know, swap back and forth with each other over time. And thanks again, guys. I do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time.